Welcome back. All right, now we're going to preview Vegas. So the Vegas Golden Knights are a team that we saw in the playoffs against Montreal, and at certain points in the rest of the playoffs too, there's a weakness down the middle. There is absolutely a weakness down the middle, and yet Vegas has raised the bar high enough that they're still one of the favorites to win the Stanley Cup. And I get it. In the Pacific Division, I'm taking them to finish first, and that's where things get interesting. Anything less than first place will be considered on some level a fail for Vegas. Now, if Edmonton had like an absolutely amazing 110-point season and Vegas ends up with 106, well, that's not too bad. But again, this division is seen as being the weakest. Vegas is seen as being a strong contender. They should finish, you would think, at least 10 points ahead of second place. That will be the expectation, and then it's whether or not they can get there. So their special teams numbers are interesting because their power play seems to have been a problem from the beginning. 17.8%, 22nd overall. Maybe that's where some of that center depth is missing. There's something just not working with their power play, but their penalty kill, everything works fine. 86.8%, which is first last year in penalty kill numbers. Their goals for 190, that was third. 122 goals against, that was first. That's the Jennings Trophy for Fleury and for Leonard. And of course, Fleury is now gone. And so the questions are going to be asked now about the goaltending, and we'll see how things go. We'll come back to that. So their draft picks since 2015, of course, they weren't around in 2015 or 2016 at the draft table, but they were there in 2017. And if you were a first rounder, you're gone. Cody Glass, the most recent, he was drafted 6th overall, Suzuki at 13th. Brandstrom at 15th. I think they would love to have Nick Suzuki in this lineup right now. I think Brandstrom, jury's still out on how good he's going to be. Haig at 34 was a good pick. 2018, the earliest they drafted was Morozov at 61st, but that was the first of 8 picks. They've never really traded away all their picks. Vegas is a big believer in having draft picks later rounds and looking for steals. 2019, they drafted Krebs at 17. So at this point, he's the earliest draft pick who has yet to be traded. So if you're Peyton Krebs and you look at the lineup, Krebs might be the next one getting traded. I don't know. Korczak drafted 41st overall. He has a chance to break through and maybe get some games this year. Brisson drafted 29th in 2020 and 2021. They drafted Dean 30th and they drafted Chayka at 38th. They've only once traded out their first-round draft pick. They really haven't. I mean, they've done the going all-in kind of look to it, but in reality, they're also making sure they keep their prospects stockpiled. So exits. Really, Fleury, Reeves, Nosek, and Sakura. Sakura only played a handful of games, but with Reeves, Nosek, Fleury, what you're losing is that Misfits identity, again, keeps fading, and what it's replaced with is a pretty darn good, deep team that we'll see how things go for them this year, right? So, new faces, Brossois, given the unfortunate role here of taking a spot that was once Fleury's, and I understand, like, he's not going to be expected to be Fleury, but you go from Leonard and Fleury to Leonard and Brossois, there you go. Howden and Patrick are also added. And both Brett Howden and Nolan Patrick will be looking to bounce back from what were pretty miserable seasons for them. And that's really going to make up the difference. Now, what's interesting to me is that on their depth chart here, got 4, 5, 6. I got like 8 defensemen that I think have a chance of playing some games. We'll see if that changes. But their forward group is pretty deep. And so I wouldn't rule out more defensemen being added at some point. Or maybe one of the players in the AHL ends up coming up and doing pretty well. So, forward group, you've got Pacioretty. Question marks abound about Pacioretty going forward and what they can expect. Stevenson, is he a first-line center? I don't see him as necessarily a first-line center. I don't see necessarily Carlson as a first-line center at this point either. So there's 2 second-line centers, and that'll be the big question. Stone, excellent season for Stone. And then things kind of petered out when they played against Montreal in the playoffs. Marchessault, of course, will be with Carlson and Smith. That still seems to be the line that really stirs things up when they need it to. And if that line's going, they have a pretty good chance. And then you have Janmark, who showed he can be really hot and cold again. Patrick could very well be that third line center. Dadonov, who was brought in the offseason, it's not in the new faces, should be. But Evgeny Dadonov brought in from Ottawa, a contract Ottawa regretted, and Vegas is going to see how his goal scoring bounces back. Maybe he gets added to that power play with the idea of sprucing that up. And then you have Carrier, Howden, and Nick Raw rounding out the forward group in all likelihood. But you've got Krebs, you've got Kolasar, you've got Brown. Tuck is on the injured list to start the season. And then you've got Berchi and you've got Quinney as well. Sven Berchi, I would love to see him prove everybody wrong, make their lineup, and have Vegas make some difficult choices along the way. But we'll see how this goes, because again, when Tuck is 100% in the lineup and good to go, that definitely frees them up to maybe trade it forward, right? So the blue line, it is very solid. I like this top six. Martinez stayed. Pietrangelo signed the huge contract last year. McNabb and Theodore. That's a very competent, solid top four defense. Haig and Whitecloud likely being that third pairing. Young for a third pairing, but both of them with some upside. Coughlin is going to get some games here and there too, and Bischoff could get into the lineup. But it is a very solid group, and then beyond that, we'll see. Again, we'll see who else they might add. Goaltenders, and again, there may be some others on the list that end up getting into a game or two here and there, but that top six is really, really sound. Their goaltending, Leonard, I think, is better than some people give him credit for, and probably not as good as other people give him credit for. I think it's probably somewhere in the middle, but he wins games. He had a very good winning record with Vegas last year. Brossoit, it depends on which Brossoit this is going to be. Is this going to be the Laurent Brossoit from this season or the one from the year before? But again, in a new location, it becomes even more unpredictable than it otherwise would be. And Logan Thompson is number 3. Vegas fans are excited about Logan Thompson from seeing what he can do in Henderson. There's no reason, though, to just hand him a backup job necessarily, but he probably does get to fight Brossoit, and we'll see how the preseason goes. The preseason's only a few weeks off. Prospects, Caden Korzak, who may very well end up playing some games for them this year. Brendan Brisson, who they're going to take their time with. Daniil Cheka, and Zach Dean. Zach Dean, a bit of a surprise at 30, but Vegas' draft record has been pretty sound so far. So we'll see how things go. But again, I'm picking them to finish first. Their Stanley Cup odds are currently at 8-1, which is pretty solid odds. It really is. So when we look at their record over these 3 years, the most recent 3 years of their 4-year existence, they were 43, 32, and 9, third in the Pacific in 2018, 2019. And that was kind of a down a little bit off of the emotional high of going all the way to the finals in 2018. They lost in the first round against San Jose in spectacular fashion. One of the most viewed videos I've ever done is me reviewing that Game 7 because 5-minute penalty. 2019-2020, they finished 39, 24, and 8. They finished first in the Pacific. They get all the way to the conference finals and lost against Dallas. And the one thing with Vegas is that when they're struggling, their offense is gone. Their offense just disappears, and that's something they're going to have to work on. 2020, 2021, they finished 40, 14, and 2. Fantastic record. They definitely benefited from having some weak teams in that West division. They finished second in the West, second overall, behind Colorado. And, yeah, we'll see how they do this year. Again, I expect them to be first in the Pacific. But in the playoffs, they got past Colorado, and then they lost to Montreal in what was a huge upset for the Montreal Canadiens. And so for Vegas, that's 3 years in a row they've lost against a team they probably should have beaten. Whether it's San Jose 2 years prior, Dallas the year before, or this year where it's Montreal. So that's something they have to work on. They have to work on, when things are down and they're having a hard time, not just completely drying up offensively. And that's where Peter DeBoer's job may very well be under a microscope this year, because the expectations are high for Vegas. Their schedule is, well, it's interesting. They open on the 12th, first night of hockey, against Seattle at home. That's going to be fantastic. Seattle's first game is against Vegas. Perfect. You can start that rivalry now. On the 14th, they're in LA. Then on the 20th, so they have a nice long break. they're at home against St. Louis. 2 nights later, they're at home against Edmonton. 2 nights later, they're at home against the Islanders. So that's a 3-game homestand. No back-to-backs in there. Not bad. Then they go to Colorado on the 26th. So that's a revenge tour of sorts for Colorado anyways. But then they go to Dallas the next night. So then they're looking for revenge on Dallas on the 27th. And then on the 29th, they're at home against Anaheim. So there's a short homestand, a short road trip, and some back and forth. But it's a schedule that's not that daunting. And so we'll see how it goes. There's the one back-to-back in October, and that's in Colorado and Dallas. And I would expect they'd win at least one of the two. But if they get off to a slow start, everybody's going to go crazy about it. And so don't be that surprised if maybe they're one of those teams that stumbles a bit out of the gate and then they shoot right up to the top of the division anyways, and they all psych at everybody who thought, hey, maybe Vegas is finally on their way down. I'm not betting on it, not this year anyways, but let me know your thoughts in the comment section below regarding the Vegas Golden Knights as we get very close to the finish. Tomorrow I will do Washington and Winnipeg, and then we're done. And then we're getting into other preseason type videos. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.